So today we're going to walk you through the basics of scholarly publishing, how to figure out where to publish, what open access means, what actually happens when you submit a paper, and the resources you can lean on. Our goal is to make this whole process feel a little less mysterious. So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at how to choose a journal and how to spot good ones versus ones to avoid. Then we'll talk about your publishing options, including open access, what it is, why people do it, and what those article processing charges or APCs are all about. After that, we'll go step by step through the submission process, including what happens when you get reviewer feedback. And finally, we'll point you to resources at ODU and beyond that can help you at every stage. Where should I publish? The big question. There is not always a single right answer. A lot of it depends on your field, your topic, and even your career goals. Some journals carry more weight in certain disciplines. Some are better fits for niche topics. A great place to start is by talking with your faculty advisors or committee members. They've been through this and they know the landscape. You can also look at journal websites. The About section is usually pretty clear about what kinds of articles they want. And remember, you're not just looking for any journal that will take your work. You're looking for the right home for it. So once you've got a short list, the next step is figuring out whether those journals are reputable. Sadly, not all journals are. There are predatory journals out there that charge fees, but skip the real peer review process. Publishing in those journals won't help you, and it can actually hurt your reputation. So how do you check? Well, there's a few ways. You see here, we have some resources linked. Cabell's is a database that flags questionable journals. They use a list of criteria to determine the credibility or lack thereof of a journal. So let's take a look at Cabell's. I'm going to click on this link, and remember, these links will be available to you in the slides. This link takes me to ODU's page where I have the database listed here. And I just want to note that if you're going to use databases like this, go through the library site so that you can be authenticated as an ODU user. You can't just go on the open web and search for it in a search engine because it won't recognize you as someone who subscribes to this information. So I've linked you through the library. I'm going to click here on Cabell's. And this is what their homepage looks like. There's a search bar. You can search by journal title. You can search by topic. You can also browse Cabell's. So you can browse all journals. You can browse verified, meaning trustworthy journals, or you can browse predatory journals that you don't want to publish in. And you can also browse by discipline. So let's say I've been approached and offered to publish in contemporary chemistry. What I would do is I would take that title and type it in here, hit enter, and you'll see I get a list of results just like any database. I can choose any of these filters, look at all journals. I can choose Journalytics, which is looking at verified journals, or I can look at all the predatory journals. But you can see here, since I put in the title, I'm getting an exact match for a journal. And you can see there's contemporary chemistry. It's marked as predatory. And if I hover over this information bubble, it tells me, do not submit your manuscript to this journal. Cabell's has determined it engages in predatory practices. So they're giving you warning here. You can also take a look at the predatory report for this journal by clicking View Predatory Report. There's an overview of its violations, and then you can click on the Violations tab and see specifically what the people at this journal are doing wrong. You can see that there's a range of minor to severe infractions. And for this journal, Contemporary Chemistry, their severe is under peer review. So let's take a look at that. It says evident data that little to no peer review is being done, and the journal claims to be peer reviewed. So essentially what we're looking at is a publisher of a journal basically lying to authors to try to get their money to take their work and publish it in their journal without actually giving it a real review, which isn't fair. So this is a good place to look, as you can see. Not every journal is listed in Cabell's. There are other ways to evaluate a journal, including using resources like the Think Check Submit checklist, which is linked here. So you might want to reference that as well. Another resource is Journal Citation Reports, or JCR, which gives you impact factors, scores, and rankings, basically to find out how influential a journal is. It's Journal Impact Factor, or JIF. That's its score. A JIF of at least 3 is considered a good score in general, but a very good JIF can range from 5 to 10, depending on the discipline. And we really can't compare scores across disciplines because their publishing patterns are very different. So you can just stay within your field. So let's take a look at JCR. So I'll click this link. Again, I'm going through the library. I'm going to click the link to get into that database. And I can, again, search or browse, just like in Cabell's. So let's look up a journal. I'm going to look up Engineering Geology. Hit enter. You can see it gives me some possible suggestions. I click on Engineering Geology, and this is the page for the journal. It gives you a lot of information about the journal, how long it's been in existence, where it's published, who publishes it. You can scroll down and see the journal's performance, which is its metrics, what we call scholarly metrics. And here's the journal impact factor. And you can see right here, this journal has a score of 8.4. So if we think a score of 3 is good, a score of 5, between 5 and 10 is generally considered excellent. This journal is very highly rated. And if you click this link that says view calculation, this shows how the impact factor is calculated. You also have other types of metrics, but the JIF is very commonly consulted. You can also see what they have that's citable. You can also see what articles in which journals are citing from this journal. And if you scroll down in JCR, there's all kinds of information, metrics, scoring, rankings. So if you don't find your journal listed in either of these databases, which is possible, whoops, sorry about that. Talk to your faculty or come and talk to a librarian. We can help you determine whether a journal is trustworthy. So it looks like we're on to publishing options. So let's talk about how you want to publish. So traditional journals have usually been around for a long time, and with that comes a lot of prestige. Publishing in these kinds of journals is still considered very important in many fields, especially when it comes to things like tenure, promotion, or just building your reputation as a researcher. But it's not just about prestige. Authors also need to think about their rights. When you publish in these journals, you're often signing over copyright, which means you may lose control over how your work is shared or reused. That's something to be very mindful of before you submit. Now let's talk about the money side of things. With traditional publishing for authors, the good news is that you usually don't pay anything to publish in these traditional journals. But that doesn't mean publishing is free. It just shifts the cost. Readers often hit paywalls and may need to pay per article to read your work. And libraries like ours pay very high subscription fees to give you access to as much content as possible. Those costs can be huge, and they keep going up every year, which puts a lot of pressure on library budgets. So let's talk about the alternative, open access. Publishing open access means your article is free to read for anyone, anywhere. They're openly licensed and there are no paywalls, no subscriptions. So that's great for visibility and for equity in research and education. But here's the catch. Because open access journals aren't making money from subscriptions, they usually charge an APC, an article processing charge. That's what covers the cost of publishing. The good news is that APCs don't always have to be paid out of pocket. Sometimes they're covered by grants, and sometimes they're waived entirely. So here, under resources, we're gonna visit another link. Let's look at the APC agreements page on the library site. Click there. There's great information here about open access publishing, and you can see here the list of publishers where ODU authors get discounts or full waivers. This is a good place to check before you panic about any fees. You may not actually have to pay them. And if you have questions about a specific journal, ask a librarian if it's included in an APC waiver agreement, and we can look it up. I also want to add as a side note, some journals are now hybrid, meaning that they'll offer both traditional and open access publishing options within one journal. The process. All right. Before you ever hit that submit button, there are a few things that could make your life so much easier. First, make sure your manuscript is in the best possible shape. That means revising carefully and making use of resources like the Writing Center, on campus or online. They can help with style, citations, and even formatting. Second, check the journal's submission guidelines. Every journal has its quirks, things like word count limits, citation styles, file types. Following these up front saves you from getting bounced back before your article can be reviewed. And this is very important. If you haven't already, get yourself an ORCID. This is basically your researcher ID. It follows you throughout your career and keeps all your work connected to you. Even if someone else has the same name or your name changes, ORCID keeps your publications linked. You only need one, and once you set it up, you'll be asked for it in most submission systems. You'll also want to register on the journal's submission portal. This way it's all set up and ready to go.
Hey everyone, so I just wanted to point out a couple things also before you submit, that there are probably several associated policies of your journal, and you do want to review and understand these to make sure that they are going to accommodate your needs. So for example, many journals support data sharing and also the inclusion of a data availability statement, but it varies between journals. So data sharing could be required or maybe just encouraged. Journals are also starting to develop AI policies for how authors can use AI tools in their process, and then how to also disclose the use of AI. Journals and publishers may also support the adoption of credit, which is contributor roles taxonomy, and this outlines authors' contributions to their research outputs. If you're working on a project that is federally funded, you'll want to know what your funder requires, as well as how the publisher or journal is handling those funders' policies. So we don't want you to be surprised at the end or after you submitted that some of these policies exist. So just make sure that you're looking at these ahead of time.
All right. Thanks, Nikki. Okay. Now comes the big moment, submitting your article. So you'll upload your manuscript, figures, tables, and maybe a cover letter. Some journals want you to highlight why your article matters so that cover letter can make a difference. From there, the editor does an initial screen. If your article is a good match for the journal, it goes into peer review. This means a panel of reviewers reads it and gives feedback. Sometimes it's a blind review where you don't know who the reviewers are. This process can take weeks or even months, so you may want to prepare yourself for that. Most publishers let you track your submission online so you can check your status. Remember, not all journals follow the exact same process. Make sure to read instructions carefully and consult with your faculty if you have questions. All right, revision and resubmission, acceptance and rejection. Almost nobody gets accepted on the first try. So don't panic if you get a long list of reviewer comments. The key here is to respond respectfully. Make the changes where you can, and if you don't agree with a comment, explain why in your response letter. Reviewers are looking for dialogue and thoughtful engagement, not perfection. Sometimes, though, you'll get a rejection. It happens to everyone, even senior scholars. A rejection doesn't mean your work isn't valuable. It usually means the article just wasn't the right fit for that journal. So if your article is rejected, use the feedback, revise it, and submit it somewhere else. Acceptance. Congratulations. You've received that email. Your paper is accepted. That's when APCs come into play if you're publishing open access. You'll never be asked to pay during submission, only after acceptance. That is also a big difference between trustworthy journals and predatory journals. Often predatory publishers will require an upfront payment because remember, they're preying on you. They just want your money. If you're publishing open access and your grant covers publishing fees, this is when you'll use it. And if you're publishing in a journal covered by ODU's APC agreements, the publisher system will recognize your affiliation and waive the charge automatically, as long as the corresponding author is from ODU or another Viva member institution, Viva being Virginia's Library Consortium, and you can always ask us. From there, your paper gets published online or in print. If it's open access, you can share it anywhere on your personal website, social media, or in ODU's Digital Commons. Support and resources. You're not alone in this. Your faculty are the best guides for field-specific questions. The Writing Center can help with everything from grammar to citation style. And the librarians can help you find journals, manage citations, understand publishing agreements, and even navigate data management requirements. So if you're ever stuck, reach out. That's what we're here for. And if you like having guides at your fingertips, here are a few linked. The Directory of Open Access Journals, or DOAJ, is great for finding legitimate open access journals. Taylor and Francis and Springer Nature both have step-by-step guides for using their submission portals. And Nature Portfolio has cover letter examples that you can adapt to your own submission. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We know this is a lot to take in, but hopefully you feel a little clearer about how publishing works and what support is available to you. Here's our contact info. Please don't hesitate to email or make an appointment. We would love to help you with your publishing journey.